Hi, everyone. My name is Seema Ganaba. I'm the Senior Client Onboarding Manager here at Listrak. And I'm so excited for you to join today to get to learn a little bit more about some of the basic principles for segmentation so that you can really see success in your email and SMS campaigns at Listrak. On our agenda today, we're going to go ahead and talk through what available criteria groups can be used for segmentation in the Listrak NextGen platform. There is a variety of options that can be used when building out different segments for your messages. And we're going to talk through what is available to be collected and how it can be applied to your messages. We're also going to talk about some best practices for your ongoing broadcast segmentation. We want to make sure that you're taking a lot of different avenues in building your messages and applying the correct segments to the correct audiences. And then we're going to go ahead and jump into the list track platform and we're going to build some example audiences together. We're going to see what these segments look like and we're going to see how they can be applied. Getting started in the list track platform, you're going to see a few basic groups that are available for your broadcast segmentation. Within those criteria groups, we have a lot of different opportunities to segments based on some of the different fields that are available. Starting with the contact profile fields, this is a group that gives the option to include many different types of custom fields that can be unique to your brand, as well as to specific demographic data. This can include common fields that are personal data that is generally acquired for a contact, whether it be through a list import, through an API connection, or through JavaScript that is placed on your website. This can generally include a first name, last name, city, country, and other specific information to your contacts. There's also an opportunity to create custom fields, and that allows you to collect and create unique and additional data about that contact. Next up, we have contact behavior. Contact behavior is going to be data that's specifically derived from a contact's actions and behaviors, and this can range from subscription, message, and site engagement. This will allow you to see whether a contact has browsed, whether they have carded, and give you a different variety of filters to use within your segment. Next up, we have product behavior. Now, this data is going to be derived from a contact's purchase history and anything that is going to be used, such as whether it's the brand they purchased specifically, if there is a category, how many times they have purchased, when was the last time they purchased, but can also include behavior for their cart abandonment, if they've added items to their cart, or even if they've browsed some of those specific items as well. Last up, we have our predictive analytics. And within our predictive analytics, this uses Listrak's AI technology to take information about a contact's past interactions on your website and identify patterns of behaviors to help see what those contacts are most likely to do in the future. We track many different data points to learn about your contact base and predict those future actions. And the models are constantly updating to account for these new trends and behavior across your contact base. Some best practices that we're going to talk about when we get into the platform and start building some segments is really wanting to follow some four main commandments. The biggest ones that we generally always want to include when we're targeting your campaigns are going to be based around the recency of a specific action. So, whether we're talking about the subscription to the channel, maybe when was the last time they clicked specifically on a message to include that engagement in there? When was the last time a contact made a purchase or a transaction on your website? Or just when the contact browsed the site? Looking at these campaigns and including these four basic filters are going to be important. And then using recency is going to help with targeting specific audiences, whether it's your most active, if they've fallen into a more lapsed state, or if we're trying to reawaken some inactive contacts. Using these filters and placing different date and timestamps on them will be a very important but basic setup to building on these campaigns in an effective way. Your most active contacts should always receive your highest frequency of broadcasts. They are going to be receiving the most amount of messages a week. They should be getting anything that is important as an addition to any sort of promotional and broadcast messaging that you send out as a supplement to your campaigns as well. In that same sense of thought, we're also going to pull back on sending to lapsed or dormant contacts. This is going to be pulling back on your date and timestamp in the recency and seeing that if we need to send maybe a few times a week or a few times a month, but hitting them with the most important messaging that you are sending out, whether it's your largest promotion or maybe an important new release of products. Another important aspect to this is going to be leveraging Journey Hub and using segment entry events to ensure that we're targeting all of these contacts that may have fallen in between the two segments I mentioned before. So, seeing when in that engagement peaks to say that if someone isn't necessarily in your most active segment, but maybe they're falling into that inactive segment, ensuring that we have an automated campaign that's triggered based off of a segment entry event is going to ensure that we are routinely hitting each one of your contacts with messaging in a timely manner. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the platform and start building out some segments together to see what this looks like in action. All right, everyone. Now that we're in the platform, let's go ahead and jump in and start building some of those segments with the criteria that we just spoke about in those slides. As mentioned, we have four different types of subgroups that we want to look at when we're building our criteria. We have those contact profiles, the contact behavior, the product behavior, and the predictive analytics that we spoke about earlier. So, taking some of those commandments and looking at utilizing them within our segments, let's go ahead and start with subscription that falls under this contact behavior right here. Now, Listrak has this great type in functionality that I can click through and look for my filter specifically, or I can actually just begin typing it in and it will look up the function and find the query that I'm looking for. So starting here, I'm going to start with original subscription. And this one specifically is going to be looking at the date a contact first subscribed across all channels. And it will be refined when applied to that audience within the channel. So starting with this original subscription, and because this is going to be our day-to-day segment, we're going to open this up a little bit and we're going to look back at anyone who has subscribed within the last 45 days. Now within this here, we'll see a button that says include year. This way, we'll want to check this right now to look back at the 45 days of this specific year. If I wanted to look at the subscription from any previous years and maybe wanted to include contacts that subscribed during a specific period of time, year over year, maybe during the holidays, so that you can retarget them with holiday campaigns for the next year, that's when we wouldn't check the year. But for this specific use case of building a day-to-day broadcast marketing segment, I'm going to include the year. I'm going to hit apply. And then I'm going to click this plus button right here. And I'm going to go back to my subscriptions and I'm going to look for most recent subscription. Now, the difference between the most recent subscription and the original subscription is this is the recording of the date a contact last subscribed across all channels. And this is important in case a contact may have unsubscribed or resubscribed, that we're using the most recent date in this filter. So I'm going to put 45 here and I'm going to hit apply. And I'm going to change this and to an or because I want to look at contacts whose original subscription is in the last 45 days or if their most recent subscription is in the last 45 days. Now that I'm done looking at subscriptions in this top line, I'm going to go down to my next filter here. I'm going to build down, and what I'm going to go ahead and include is my click date or the last time that the contact clicked on a message. I'm going to click on this and to change it to an or, and I'm going to select this criteria, and I'm going to go ahead and type click in. Under messages, we'll see that it says a last click date. So right now, again, as we are wanting to target those in a day-to-day, everyday broadcast style segment that isn't going to be limited to your most active, but isn't going to be limited to your most inactive, but somewhere in between, I'm going to include a click date of the last 120 days. This will look back at anyone who may have specifically clicked on a message within this time frame and will include it in this segment. I'm going to hit apply. Now from here, while that is continuing to build out my segment, I'm going to click on filter and I'm going to click and change this to an or segment again. And I'm going to look for some purchase behavior. So my purchase behavior can be found under this product behavior and under this purchase tag. We're going to go ahead and look at all orders because we're not doing anything too specific in wanting to look at a customer's most common order, maybe what their average is. We want to look at their entire collective order history. Within this all orders, I'm going to click on the last order date. And for the last order date, I'm actually going to go ahead and say I want to look at anyone who has purchased as well in the last 120 days. This here is going to include those that have made some sort of transaction and include those contacts inside of this segment. The next filter we're going to look at is browse behavior. And similar to the last order date, since we're not looking at anything specific of if they viewed a particular PDP page, if they went to a certain category, but keeping it evergreen and wanting to see if they in fact have just browsed your site. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and click on this contact behavior again, and I'm going to click on this browse, and we're going to see the last site visit. This is at any time if they visited your site in the last X amount of days, they'll be included within this segment. So I'll go ahead and include 120 days as well for this last site visit. The last filter that we're going to include within our segment for our day-to-day marketing is going to be our predictive models. So we're going to look here at the different predictive filtering and see which one we're going to include. Since this is again an evergreen day-to-day based marketing message, our segment is really going to be around when is their next opportunity to purchase. This is an important one to include to see what type of likelihood can be measured from this contact. So we're going to click on this purchase right here, and we're going to go ahead and take a quick look and see. We're not looking for anything specific to see if they have a discount, nothing if they have a coupon. It's really going to kind of come down to this engagement and their likelihood to purchase, which we can see is right here. We'll click on their likelihood to purchase, and there's a couple of different options that are included in this drop down here. The likelihood models really measure the chance that a given behavior is going to occur within the next 14 days. And since this is our day-to-day evergreen marketing segment, I'm going to include those that have a higher likelihood or are most or more likely to make a purchase. Those that have been identified as most are contacts who are 2 times or more likely to complete a specific action. I want to make sure I'm including both options, so I'm going to come back down here to predictive, engagement, and likelihood of purchase. And I'm also going to include more likely as well. And the more likely is going to be contacts that are more likely than the average contact and less than 2 times more likely to complete a specific action. So somewhere in the middle. This segment right here that looks at a subscription date, recency in the last 45 days, a click date in the last 120 days, a last order date in the last 120 days, a last site visit in the last 120 days, or likelihood to purchase that they have of most or more is a great base to send to your contacts day in and day out as an evergreen marketing segment. Now let's take a look at the other two sides of the spectrum, starting with the most active group, and see who we want to send to a little bit more often, and if we want to include maybe on additional messages after all messages have sent. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this filter out, and I'm going to start building again. We're going to take the same pieces of criteria and the same ideas for the segment that we just built, But the only thing we're really going to change is the recency of it. So starting with the select criteria again, I'm going to find my subscriptions. And instead of 45 days this time, I'm actually going to streamline it a little bit and say I'm going to use only 30 days. It doesn't seem like too much of a difference, but it's enough to really build out, seeing it, have it be a little bit more streamlined in who we're actually targeting because it's those only within the last month. Okay. From here, we're going to go back to our click and I'm going to choose my last click date. And this time I'm actually going to have it be a little bit tighter, and I'm actually going to make this be in the last 90 days. So previously we were higher up in the 120, but this time we're going to go down to 90 days and make it a little bit tighter and kind of cut off um, some time from it specifically. So we're going to go ahead and apply that. I'm going to add to my filter again, and I'm going to go ahead and look at my purchase behavior and my last order date. And in my last order date here, I'm going to go ahead and say anyone that's purchased in the last 60 days. So only within the last 2 months or so. Same thing with my browse behavior. I'm going to go to my last site visit, change this to the last 60 days. And then last but certainly not least, I'm going to go ahead and include my predictive modeling and my likelihood to purchase. And this time I'm only going to include most. So looking at the difference in the segment as being pulled, this is really going to be an important one that if you want to ensure that you are sending all messaging to them, but also some additional or supplemental messaging, whether it's based off of a reoccurring campaign that leverages dynamic product recommendations, whether it's an early access to a new product release that not everyone gets to hear about first. Using this very recent and very engaged group of contacts is important to ensure that you're building any sort of incremental revenue by sending additional messaging to them. Now, the last segment we're going to take a look at is we're going to build out for our inactive segment or for those that are potentially churning. I'm going to take the same ideas and utilize those that has the same criteria but has a little bit more of a look back window inside the recency date. So pulling in those subscriptions again, we're going to look at original subscription. This time though, you'll see I won't go back much further than 45 days. And the reason that is for subscriptions specifically, we don't want to go too far back in time, especially if they haven't done any sort of other type of email engagement, meaning they haven't clicked on a message, they haven't opened a message, they haven't made a transaction on your website. If all they've done is subscribed, they may not be the most targeted group of contacts. So leaving it at around 45 days is a good kind of benchmark for your subscription rate overall. Next, heading into the last click date, our most active, we looked at a 90-day look back window. For our everyday, we set about 120 days. For someone that's more inactive or may not have potentially clicked on a message in quite some time, we're actually going to bump this all the way up to 240 days. This is going to be someone that may have fallen out of clicking on any sort of recent messaging or doing some sort of engagement. We have some that actually can even go up to that have clicked within the last 365 days as well. General rule of thumb for building out segments and looking at inactive segments is we'll want to stay within a 1 year window. So whether it's someone who has clicked a message, who may have purchased something or browsed on your site, it's important to remember that 1 year window and don't go too much farther back than that. So we're going to keep this last click date at 240 days, but we're going to bump this up a bit in looking at the last time that they've purchased or the last time that they have browsed our site. And we're going to go ahead and use that 1 year look back window. Okay, so we can see last order date is in the last year. I'm going to go to browse here and is in the last 365 days. And then finally, again, we'll want to ensure that we're using our predictive likelihood to purchase and to see if maybe they haven't subscribed in the last 45 days, maybe they haven't clicked in the last 240, and maybe they haven't visited your site or made a purchase in the last year. They could still potentially have a high likelihood to purchase. So, just in case, we're going to add the more and most likely to purchase. So this is going to be a pretty big inactive segment. The goal is to really mail to this audience and get them out of that inactive state and see if we can move them into an active segment or that day-to-day evergreen marketing segment. Again, this is not a segment that is meant to send to every day. This is something that's very important for large promotional type messaging, big sales, big new product releases, something that you want to ensure that you are creating the largest pool of contacts and building out that segment. So this is a great look at 3 different types of segments that you can use in different types of campaigns and how you can apply them to your messages. So hopefully you feel better about building out different types of segmentation inside of the Listrak platform. You can always tailor these strategic recommendations based off of the different types of campaigns that you are looking to build and really use them as a framework to build even more campaigns within the Listrak platform. You can always check out a lot more video resources and Help Center articles inside of our Help Center. There's additional strategies and optimizations that you can utilize when building out these segments. And always reach out to your account manager to really help guide and build any one of these segments when you're building out your campaigns. I hope you enjoyed our time today. Thanks so much for joining.